As an entrepreneur, one of the most important things that I try to do is always sit in rooms with people who are smarter than me and make more money than me. Because the fact of the matter is, if you're the smartest person in the room or the richest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Unless all those people in the room have paid $5,000 to be there to get mentorship and direction and coaching from you, you need to be in rooms where people have more skills and more talent and make better business decisions so that you can learn from them. A few months ago, I got an email inviting me to an event called PodMAX. I'd never heard of it, but I knew I was starting a show and I knew I needed guests. And I knew that the president of the Sasha Group, which is a company founded by Gary V, James Orsini, was going to be the keynote speaker. Well, I started thinking about it. Me and Gary V are not that much different. We both sit in front of cameras. We both make content. We both help other people understand how to define their brands and how to market themselves in a way that is authentic and that attracts the right people. So when I thought, well, maybe I can pick up some amazing advice from James about what it is like to work with bigger clients, bigger companies. How can I be a part of a conversation with someone who is so intimately tied to Gary V? Because Gary has been a big influence on my life. His book, Jab, 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 Right Hook, Left, Right Hook, whatever the title of it is, has been one of those books that I have read so many times. And it was a book that I read when I first started my journey on social media. So one of the things that James taught us is that when you work on projects that you are passionate about, it isn't really work. I, friends, can tell you that is so true. When you have the opportunity to work on projects that fuel your creative passion, that give you that oomph to get out of bed in the morning, it is the best feeling out there. So in today's episode, I am going to be sharing the interviews of the people that I either interviewed during PodMAX or interviewed afterwards because of connections that I made via PodMAX. First up, we will hear from the co-founder of PodMAX, Cary, about what was the idea for this event, why did they start PodMAX in the first place, and what did they do to compensate when spring of 2020 changed everyone's plans. Then I interviewed Jamie O'Connor about how to create a brand that matters and how she started her company, Inspired Focused Digital, that helps entrepreneurs to create their brands and to attract more customers and stop losing the customers that they have. Then there's a mini interview with Robert Gregor. He is an eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapist who we're going to talk about how he helps people to process traumas quickly and effectively by engaging both hemispheres of their brain using some very strategic hand movements. It's fascinating, the work that he does. Finally, I talk with Lauren Heath about how she went from a social worker to an entrepreneur who started a pet care company. And she also really informs me about what is the difference between working with someone who is just dog walking as a hobby versus someone who is a professional in the pet care industry. Let's get to the show. Welcome to the Lindsey Elmore Show, a podcast that helps you find fulfillment amidst chaos. On this show, I interview thought leaders, doctors, creatives, spiritual gurus, and game changers who inspire you to pursue your dreams, overcome obstacles, and leave your mark. Cary spent 40 years in hiding, showing up in utter fear and with a mask on in every single situation throughout his personal, social, and business life. Josh is now on a mission to help other people unmask themselves to improve their lives and businesses by showing up and hiding no more. He is the host of the Hidden Entrepreneur podcast, and he also is the co-founder of an event that I participated in just a couple of weeks ago called PodMAX. And I am so excited to welcome Josh Cary to the Lindsey Elmore Show.
Thank you, Lindsey. It's so fun and amazing to be here. Thanks for the invite.
I can't wait to talk to you. So tell me where the idea for PodMAX started. What were you aiming to do with this live event? Was it just about connecting podcasters? What did you guys want to do, and why did you start it?
It's such a great question because, as you know, I really look at PodMAX as what's become a crash course in a lot of different things for the entrepreneur. It's this all-day event where the entrepreneur comes in, and on the surface, on paper, yes, you get to record on multiple top shows in your industry. But really, what we found very quickly winds up happening is this is a tremendous networking opportunity. It is a crash course in building your communication skills and building your interview skills, and really, at the end of the day, building your confidence. So that's really what we're giving the entrepreneur the ability to do. So yeah, it's about connecting great show hosts with great entrepreneurs, and you get to spread your message far and wide, but it is multi-layered and faceted.
So amidst everything that has happened in the spring of 2020, you guys went from a live event to OMG, what are we going to do? And so what did you do?
And that's practically how we felt about it too. In March, Eric and I were at a big conference, like I know a lot of us were. On the flight home on our calendar, we had several live events planned through the end of the year. The rug is, of course, pulled out, and we're like, OMG, WTF.
Yes.
What do we do here? So we spent a few weeks figuring out. We took pride in the experience that we provided in person that PodMAX gave all people on all sides of the mic. We thought, is it possible to bring this vibe, this energy, to recreate this experience in a virtual format? Let's give it a shot. Let's do our best. Let's put as many pieces in place as we can. We recreated the idea of the PodMAX in person, and we basically tried it, and we gave it all we could. You were part of the inaugural one that really seemed to work. Humbly so, we were thrilled with the result of how everything transferred and translated to an online event.
I will say I learned so much the day of PodMAX. Number one, I had no idea that you could do breakout rooms in Zoom calls. Like, mind boggled. I thought, man, this is an actually very effective way. And the other thing I liked was that I got to meet new people. I got to meet a lot of new people with a ton of ridiculously diverse backgrounds, and everybody was there for the mutual support of one another. So that was really fun. And I really liked kind of getting to know people individually, because you find out things about people that they don't normally go on podcasts to talk about, but you just go, well, that's what you normally talk about. It's not right for my show, but this other thing about you is completely fascinating. So what did you think, and what did you learn in this process of having to go through this time where you go, if I don't change my ways, my company will suffer, my business will suffer? What did you and Eric learn throughout the first PodMAX virtual experience that's going to make the next ones even better?
That really everybody has a message, everybody wants to be heard, and everybody is insecure and scared out of their minds. We often forget that. We look at the people around us and give them so much credit and say, well, they got it all figured out. How are they doing it? Nobody's got it figured out. We all are fundamentally scared out of our minds on some level, some more than others, yes, but we all have these thoughts, these insecurities. all you need to do is take the step forward, do what you know you want to be doing and should be doing, and take action on that. If you are legitimately authentic in your pursuits, the world, the people, and the universe will support that.
Oh, absolutely. So the next PodMAX event is on July 10th. I am going to be there. Can't wait. So who among our listeners would be an excellent person to sign up and come and participate in the next PodMAX event?
Well, thanks for asking such a great question. What we say is these events are perfect for the entrepreneur who knows deep down inside that they have a meaningful message to share. And what we found through the first round of our PodMAX Global is that there were more than a handful of people who bought into the event because they admittedly were new to podcast guesting. And they saw this, which it's the crash course in getting your message out, in perfecting your interviewing skills. So it's for anybody who knows that they want more visibility in their business. Even if they're a bit scared, we have training in place in and around this very event to help you perfect your message, your communication, and build that confidence.
Oh, absolutely. So if any of our listeners today have been thinking like, oh, I think I might want to do a podcast, but don't know where to start, come and join me on July 10th for the next PodMAX event. It is all day on Zoom. All you have to do is go and check out podmax.co. And throughout this entire episode, you will get to hear all of the interviews from people that I met thanks to Josh and Eric and PodMAX. So Josh, thank you so much for joining me today and giving us a brief introduction to PodMAX. And I hope all of our listeners will come and check it out.
Thanks so much, Lindsey.
Thank you. Jamie O'Connor is a digital strategy nerd who dedicated her life to helping brands understand their growth opportunities in the digital landscape. Her windy path to build Inspired Focus Digital has included selling scrunchies in the 4th grade, a grocery delivery business, and a social enterprise that bled itself dry. Ooh, can't wait to talk about that. And she also helped to run event operations. She has built marketing teams at venture-backed organization and bootstrapped products that achieve 6 times growth and 8-figure success. She has worked with major organizations like the NFL, the NCAA, USA Cycling, and growing brands like Pro Challenge, Happy Hairbrush, and Savor Beauty. She is on a mission to educate up-and-coming brands with the knowledge they need to level up and play in the professional arena. Jamie, welcome to the Lindsey Elmore Show.
So excited to be here with you today.
I'm so excited to talk to you. So listen, you are in the digital marketing space, and I think that people have absolutely no idea what it actually takes to grow online companies. So what do your most successful clients look like, and what do they do that is different than your least successful clients?
Well, Lindsey, this is so important because honestly, I got into this because I actually failed miserably at it when I had my own e-commerce store. And I was dabbling, and I think about if I knew what I know now, how successful I could have been back in 2015. Because it makes such a huge difference to just have that knowledge base. And that's one of the things that I'm kind of on a mission to do, whether I actually work with you or not. Making sure you know what your opportunities are before you step into a relationship with someone who is there to help you grow or trying to do it yourself. So I would say one of the really core things that I see in my really successful clients is that they know their target audience really, really well. So they really know who they're speaking to and how to resonate with them, what their pain points are and what their aspirations are. And they really dig into knowing how to speak to them in a way that matters and in a really authentic way. So not in a salesy, like snake oily type way, but a way that really connects deeply. And then they take that and they create pieces of content and I mean, beautiful imagery is great, but I think people get really caught up with needing to have things perfect and like perfectly produced. And that's actually not that important. Resonating with people is so much more important than having something really, really, really well produced. And my best clients are the ones that just take action with that information of who they're talking to and why they're talking to them and why it matters to them. Probably one of the things I see as a big, huge pitfall is when companies and clients or people I see in the marketplace are trying to speak to everyone. I have a really great example of that when I was actually with a drinkware company, and they had an amazing product, and it was a cup. And I remember the CEO actually saying to me, well, everyone can use the cup. I mean, yes, everyone can use the cup, but the reality is your cup speaks to a certain group of people. And if you speak to those people, it's kind of like the golden circle. There's going to be other people that want to be involved in that particular group, and it's going to resonate even further, kind of the halo effect, I guess.
Yeah, I like to tell, whenever I do business coaching, I tell people, you have to figure out what problems the people that you're talking to have. And then you have to tell them, hey, I can solve that problem for you. Absolutely. And I don't think, when people just come out and are like, hey, I have this cup, do you want to buy it? It doesn't work, versus saying like, I have this cup that helps you to swallow pills more effectively, that helps you to reduce waste in the environment, that helps you to train your children to drink more water, like whatever those things are, it has to be that key positioning. And so if people don't know who the heck they're talking to, where do they start?
Yeah, I mean, so it depends on obviously where you are in your journey, right? If you're totally a startup, then you have to do some research. And there's a few ways you can do that. You can accelerate it by doing some paid advertising and doing some testing with like who you think your target markets are going to be, and see if you get any bites. So there's ways to do it that way. There's ways to do it where you're kind of doing, I guess, organic grassroots, asking the questions, like boots on the ground, which I think is the position most people are in when they're starting a company. But I would say, and this is a mistake I made, is don't just go to people that love you.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. So it's funny that you said snake oil salesman, because I got my start with an affiliation with a company called Young Living, which is an essential oil company. And I became the snake oil salesman in like the best possible terms. But it is so true. When you keep hammering at the same doors of your friends and your family, and I've got this cup, do you want to buy it? They get so fatigued from it. And so how do you teach people how to reach out and like find new people to come into their ecosphere? Because I think that's something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with.
Oh, totally. I mean, for sure. There's a lot of things to it. And one of the main things really comes down to grit. The reality is nothing you see out there was an overnight success.
Oh, amen to that, sister.
It takes so much time and effort, and you really have to kind of stick to your guns and keep doing it. And it's one of the things I find really is hard with a lot of clients, is that we'll be working together for 3 or 4 months, and they're creating all this content and they're super pumped up when they first start. And it takes some time for that to really get out there and to resonate. And of course, like I said before, you can effectively move that and accelerate it with paid advertising. But I have to warn that paid advertising is also going to, again, accelerate it. So if it's not the right message, not a great product, you don't have your right market, then you're going to learn a lot faster that it doesn't work, which can be good, but it can also be extremely deflating. So being willing to stick to your guns, keep doing it, be really consistent and create that content. And when you start to see that maybe you're not quite right about what you want to sell, being willing to make a little bit of a change and a little bit of, and it doesn't have to be a complete pivot, that word pivot always, like, I think people think of it of like a complete hard left turn. And sometimes you just need to go from the 1 o'clock to the 2 o'clock, and that little change will make the difference. But people, I have a mentor actually that talks about ugly baby syndrome. And the idea is that people get really attached to what they're creating and what they're selling, especially early on. And sometimes the data shows us that it's not going to sell. And we have to be willing to look at that and make the changes and then keep moving to be successful. Yeah. And it will come, but it can take time.
Oh, it definitely takes time. I mean, I think that, you know, if you read Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Jab, Jab, Left, Right Hook, he talks about how you have to give, and then ask. And that was critical for my success, because I spent 3 years giving away content for free before I ever asked anybody to pay for anything. And so you have to build trust within your audience for sure. So I want to change gears right now, and I want to talk about social media and the ever-evolving landscape of social media. So you're a digital marketer and you train people how to do digital marketing. Facebook and Instagram are becoming increasingly restrictive over what you can actually put on their platforms. And so what are you advising your clients to do in this changing landscape?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because our core at my agency is Facebook and Instagram paid advertising. But I absolutely do not advocate for it being your only medium and vehicle for exposure. I actually have examples of clients that I've taken on kind of in triage mode that grew to multi-millions only from Facebook, and then changes happen. They, you know, algorithm changes, you have saturated your market. There's a bunch of things that happen to them all at one time. And they essentially took a total nosedive. And, you know, we stepped in and helped them look at the holistic picture, fix up what was going on their Facebook advertising, but also look at what are you doing in your email marketing? How are you nurturing that have already purchased from you and are going to be hopefully your evangelists, the people who are going to be your biggest raving fans. If you haven't taken care of them, you're missing a huge piece of the pie. And then what other platforms could you use? So sure, maybe Facebook or Instagram is your main vehicle for exposure, but we can repurpose content. Gary Vee is an amazing one at this. Another really close friend of mine, but incredible marketer, Molly Mahoney, she talks a lot about this as well. But taking that content that you're creating on whatever platform you're on, Facebook being one of them, and probably a lot of people's main vehicle, Facebook and Instagram, take that and put it onto LinkedIn, put it onto YouTube, put it onto the other channels so that you can be building up that exposure in other places. I don't know a lot about TikTok right now, but it's blowing up. So it's probably an area to be like taking some of those pieces and putting that content on there. Because the reality is, and we're seeing it even more right now in the current landscape and environment where Facebook is relying a lot more on their AI, their automated intelligence to discern what is policy violations and what is not policy violations. And as someone I worked very closely with the other day, it's a dumpster fire. Like, it's ridiculous what is happening, and we have very little control. So I always recommend, where can we have the control? So where first are the owned pieces, email marketing, potentially text message marketing, those kinds of pieces where you can nurture the people who already care about you. That, to me, foundational. And then what are the other platforms that you could redistribute that content that you're already making?
Right. And not just, I think it's not just about like, okay, I'm going to put this same piece of content in all these different places, but how do I give it that Instagram vibe versus that Facebook vibe versus that TikTok vibe? You know, how do I take the same concept and give it a new vibe? You know, I think that's really important. And that's something that I feel like I've done pretty well, is like, okay, I've got the same idea, but how do I give it a different look, a different appeal to jive with a different audience? And so I think that's really important for people, just to be really creative during this time, because I could not agree with you more. The AI that is going on right now is insanity. Like, my account has been flagged for misinformation, and I'm like, hey guys, this is a Wall Street Journal article that I just reshared, and you're flagging it as misinformation. Or like, this is a published article from the journal Nature, and you're saying it's misinformation. It does not make any sense. And how do you convince people that email marketing is not dead?
Oh my gosh, this is a conversation I have all the time. Well, the numbers show it. The reality is that, and I focus heavily on the e-commerce space, although I do have clients in digital and lead generation and coaching and consulting. The majority of our clients are in e-commerce. So across my clients, I see it, but you can look at global stats from platforms like Klaviyo or ActiveCampaign and see that the reality is that most e-commerce stores are still getting a significant amount of revenue from your email marketing. And the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that email list that you own, that a person has given you permission to use, can be used in a lot of other ways than just sending them an email. So you can actually use it in advertising, where you can upload that list to target those people. So that's one way that you can use it further than just your email. But if you look at the numbers from like even Black Friday and a lot of our e-commerce stores, they'll earn a quarter of their revenue in that time frame. And a huge part of it comes from those touch points in email. And what a lot of us do is, like, we might scroll through our phone and not actually look at any of those emails until the day we want them. And then we want to be on that list because I'm looking for the skincare brand that I love and seeing if there's something, that a gift with purchase that I can get when I'm re-upping my order or whatever. So that, the data alone shows that it is still very viable. But one last piece I would say is that a lot of people miss that it's not just promotional emails in your inbox.
Oh, amen. Yes. It's nurturing. You have to give, and then ask.
And that's, I think, a huge mistake that so many people make. I think that the number is that something like 80% of people using email platforms are only using 20% of their capabilities. So there's all of these automated evergreen things that companies can set up where, yeah, you want to change them with the times and the things that are happening, but you don't have to be writing a new email every single week in order to utilize these features that actually make probably a bigger difference than sending a promotional email every week. So things like a really strong welcome series, where when someone gives you their email address, the first email, I always recommend the first email be from like the CEO or the founder, and have it be a really authentic, really heartfelt email, no design, just straight from kind of the heart of the CEO of why they have this company, why they would connect with you, and then asking them to respond. And essentially your welcome series is that giving, it's the nurturing. It's like, this is why you should become a fan of my company and why we're also here for you. Mm-hmm. And then a really, really strong abandoned cart series. I mean, those two things, I can't tell you how many people come to me wanting to work with us. They are actually doing millions a year and they're missing out on potentially millions because they don't have just those two simple automations set up in email. So yeah, certainly I see firsthand that email is not dead. And I see firsthand that most people are missing out on the opportunities that exist to use it.
I completely agree. I coach business clients and they're always like, but I want to grow on social media. And I'm like, you can do that, but you cannot ignore email. You cannot ignore lead generation and nurturing campaigns. And I try to explain to people like, this is going to save you so much time. It just spend the 3 hours setting up your 15-step automation that says like, hey guys, here's who we are. We love you because these reasons. This is why we have this company. Here's a blog post. Here's a course I taught. Here's a this, here's a that. By the way, do you want to buy this thing? And so I completely agree with you that email is not dead, and I have had great success with email, and I love sending the emails because I know what I'm communicating to my audience, and I can see the statistics of like, okay, did this email do well? Did it not do well? Did people click on the thing that I wanted them to click on? And I agree with you. So talk to me a little bit more about how important it is for brands to craft an authentic voice.
Yes. I mean, this to me is one of the most important pieces. And I guess not just voice, because I've seen where brands can be a little bit on and off with their voice per se, but as long as they keep the authenticity and truly stay to the core of who they are and their mission and what their true intent is of whatever they want to offer the world, then you will have people that are just attracted to you. I mean, that just happens. It's when people start to, what I see across my clients is when people start to kind of go in these directions where they think they should be doing this, or they should be going after this audience, but it doesn't actually match who they are and what they're really putting out there with their product, then that's where you just get that sense. I mean, we've all opened that email where we're like, ugh, I don't like how they're talking to me, or it just I think we saw a lot of that in the COVID environment where people would send out emails and hit on like, we're here for you staying at home. But like in reality, they didn't mean it.
Oh my God. Yes. My friend posted a joke the other day that was like, during COVID, companies be like, now more than ever, you can buy our products. And it's like, wait, what? But yes, I completely agree.
And the reality is that there are very real opportunities for people during times like this, if it actually fits. So a really great example I have with a client is Savor Beauty, and they one took off because people couldn't go buy their products in person. So online they did really well, but they also made the conscious choice to take some of their resources and create an organic hand sanitizer that was very pure and really well done, but also worked really well. Now, that's not something they had to do. And it's not something that, they did because they wanted to just sell, sell, sell. It was because they saw that they had the resources, they could do it, and it could help people because people couldn't get their hands on it. And it could be something that people who care about having organic products could have, because that was something that was hard to find. You're buying like Purell and you like no idea what's in it. And so if you cared about those things, they brought something to market that worked, it mattered, it fit within who they are as a company, and they were able to sell it without being like, we're here for you.
Yes.
So,
And it also, it's like you just said, it's the pivot from noon to 1 o'clock. It wasn't like they were a headphone company that was like, hey guys, now we make hand sanitizer. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And so they took what they already had, an audience that wanted organic beauty products, and said, hey guys, in this time, everybody needs some hand sanitizer. We're going to make you the best, cleanest, purest hand sanitizer that there is out there. So it was still logical, that move for them. I did the same thing. People have been begging me for years and years to teach yoga online. And I always was like, well, no, I think yoga is it's a discipline that happens face to face. Well, that ain't happening right now. And so I said, well, forget it. Okay, you guys have been asking. Here's a 7-week-long yoga course. Let's do some yoga together. But it fit because my audience had watched me go to yoga teacher training and teach yoga retreats. They'd seen all of it before. If I had been, hey guys, I'm a pharmacist, but I'm going to teach you some yoga, it would have made no sense. And so it's those slight pivots that make it authentic, that make it work. It's like one of my other guests, Laura Bull, who has built brands of Carrie Underwood and Brad Paisley and Johnny Cash. She said, look, your brand is what you want to talk about for 25 years. Your marketing is what you want to talk about right now.
So exactly. I think that is such a key point, because the reality is, if you really strongly know who you are and what your brand is, you can make those slight pivots and you can adjust to what's happening right now and be a little bit more agile and a little bit more flexible. And when I say right now, I don't just mean this crazy environment we're in literally right now, but in life. I mean, things happen when you own a business that you can't expect, and you have to be able to do that. And I think what we've seen is a really incredible highlight of people who've been able to take advantage of that. And what I have said on another podcast recently that I was recording on is, it is so amazing to see examples of exactly what you just said, or examples of Savor Beauty, where the pivot not just them get successful during this time, but it is actually also adding a line of sales, a sales channel for them. They can continue after all of this is over. So the people I've seen the most successful, my clients that I've seen them do these small changes, these small pivots, that now they have a whole nother line of business that once everything turns back on, they can go back to what they were doing. And now they have this additional channel, rather than being afraid or going full circle and totally changing, being a headphone company that adds a sanitizer and not being able to continue that afterwards. So, I mean, that to me that's a lesson that we can learn and use for anything that's happening in business as we go, and how we talk about our marketing and how it fits within the full brand.
Absolutely. So you said something a moment ago that I want to go back to about how, companies have to make tough choices. And I know being an entrepreneur is the school of hard knocks all over again. And you mentioned that you started a company that then went under. And so tell us about those tough lessons that you have learned along the way, and touch on also how do you confront that daily fear that comes into play when you're running your own business?
Yeah, this story to me now, looking back, I'm actually so grateful for it. So I started a social enterprise e-commerce business that I believed to my core, we were going to change the world and we were going to be like a multi-million-dollar business within such a short amount of time. Which, I think as an entrepreneur, a lot of us can fall prey to. We can really be blinded by the light, if you will, and be really excited. And I had previously built an event management company, and I'd had that for about 7 years, 4 of which I was doing a lot of very large contracts with really large organizations. And I'd done really well. And quite frankly, I'd gotten pretty big for my britches at 28 years old. And I remember actually being at Denver Startup Week, which is an amazing free event. They have a lot of really, really great panels. And sitting at this panel with these 4 really successful entrepreneurs, and they were talking about their failures and all the failures they had. And I remember thinking, I had just started this e-commerce social enterprise, and I was thinking to myself, wow, I'm so lucky I haven't had that experience. So I think that I actually just wrote like my own death sentence as I was thinking that.
Yeah.
But what ended up happening is that I think we actually had a strong model, but I went from service-based business into e-commerce and producing our own product and having the capital intensiveness that it takes to do that. And all of the things we talked about earlier in this episode of not really realizing what it was going to take to get the customers and the time and the effort that was going to involve. I knew it. My business partner didn't. She ended up bailing after about 8 months. I stuck with it for about 2 years. And I probably was just turning the corner, but I just burned out. I was out of money. I was exhausted, and I just couldn't do it anymore. But what's so interesting about it is that experience brought me then to the next company where I was the first person they'd ever hired in marketing. One, I had to go back to the 9 to 5, which any entrepreneur listening is probably like can feel the pain.
Like it makes me sick to my stomach to think about it, It
was painful, and I definitely had to like crawl out of my hole and lick my wounds, but I also didn't have a choice. I was out of money. I had depleted my life savings. And at the time, my husband had decided he wanted to become a helicopter pilot. And so he was going back to school. So I had to go to work. I had to go to a 9 to 5. But I was lucky to work for an amazing entrepreneur that was growing an incredible company. And they had never had marketing before. And so what it took me is that 1, I had product experience. So I was able to get this job. 2, I understood at that point how capital intensive it is to be in that kind of business, to produce your own products, to try to sell that way. Those were all things that I had no idea about. So then I was able to go work for this company that had incredible growth, and I helped them grow on the direct to consumer side and really form their brand around the wholesale side. And I was with them as we grew 6 times over those 2 years. They recently had an 8-figure exit, which is amazing. And I got to see the operational constraints that happen with that kind of growth. Once you've gotten past that first hump of investing that capital and actually turning a profit, which can take years for a product company, and then to see what happens and what the constraints that exist are to actually grow to the next level. And those 2 experiences combined, which I would not have gotten without that failure, make it so that I not only understand what the marketing needs are of the clients that I work with, but I actually can understand the push and pull of what has to happen with, we have to order more product, so we can't put all this money into advertising for this next month. And we can work through it and find solutions together because I actually understand that is a very, very real reality. Mm-hmm. And for me, I don't think I would have been anywhere near as successful as I am for my clients and in my business today without having had all of that experience, including losing all of the money, which I would say I'm probably like less than a year away from completely rebuilding everything that I lost, which now would have been 3.5 years ago. And in the lifetime of things that I feel pretty proud of the fact that I've been able to rebuild in that time. So
Jamie O'Connor, it has been an honor to speak with you today on the Lindsey Elmore Show. If people want to know more about how they can work with you, where do they go?
Absolutely. So if they go to inspiredfocusdigital.com/LKE, I have put together a specific resource for your listeners that can help them just think through how to create some authentic video content that they can use for their marketing. And potentially, if they're ever interested in doing paid advertising, it'd be useful for that as well. So, and on that page, if they want to, they can book a strategy session with my team. So if they're interested in taking it to the next level, after learning a little bit more about that, they can.
All right. Well, everybody go ahead to www.inspiredfocusdigital.com/LKE and you can learn more about Jamie and all of the work that she does with her clients. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you, Lindsey. It was awesome.
Robert Gregor is a registered clinical counselor and a certified EMDR therapist and an approved EMDR consultant, as well as a published author on the matter. Robert's mission is to redefine what is possible in therapy as he helps to eliminate his clients' worst and deepest pain within one weekend. For select clients who are ready to go to the next level, Robert can go even further. He radically accelerates his clients' personal evolution and helps them to secure happiness and success for their entire legacy, not just right now, but for generations to come. So, Robert, thank you so much for being on the Lindsey Elmore Show.
Thank you so much for having me, Lindsey, and hello to all the listeners.
Okay, so start us really, really basic. What the heck is EMDR?
I hear that all the time. So EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It is a form of psychotherapy which was developed back in 1987. So it's about over 30 years now of scientific research to demonstrate its effectiveness. And what EMDR is a method where we are utilizing what's called bilateral stimulation to access both hemispheres of the brain in alternating fashion. So as you might know, sights and sounds and smells are absorbed in the right hemisphere of the brain first, and then the left side of the brain is generating a meaning and language to it and filing it away, essentially. And when EMDR therapists approach any distress that an individual has, anxiety, depression, addiction, anger problems, whatever it might be, it's all due to earlier life experiences that the brain did not properly process because the individual was stuck in a form of fight, flight, or freeze. So EMDR is going to eliminate that distress and allow the brain to finally process.
Okay. So if I am a patient of yours and I come to one of these weekends, what does my day look like? Okay, so bilateral stimulation, you're getting into both sides of my brain. what do I do? What am I doing while I'm there?
So I like to think of it as you are both an active participant and also a bystander. It's a very organic, natural process that the brain is just wants to actually go through. So what it would look like is my client would be sitting or laying on one of my chairs, which fold out, whatever you prefer. And then we are going to identify the first, the core, most deepest negative belief that's driving your distressful behavior. Often it could be, I'm not good enough, I need to be perfect, I'm not lovable, whatever that might be. And as you know, whatever it is, you're going to feel it really deep in your heart and soul. And we will be identifying the entire neurological sequence that is responsible for that belief system. And we are going to be eliminating all of that distress, allowing your brain to finally process. So it's a lot of sitting, it's a lot of processing. And if you've ever had the chance to look at what EMDR looks like, it looks extremely weird. I often say that to people. You'll be waving my hand back and forth, and the client will be following it with my hand with their eyes, or tapping on their knees or their ankles, whatever. And that will be allowing the brain to process back and forth. So it looks very strange, and we'll be sitting for a long period of time, obviously broken up with breaks, but we're talking 5 hours or so a day.
Of like staring your deepest, darkest emotions like in the face all day long. You're getting down to some really core pain that may not only be your own, but it sounds like it could also be generational, like pain that you've inherited and traumas that you've inherited as well. So all right, I'll be honest. I'm a huge fan and a huge advocate of therapy. I started going to therapy when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I was having difficulty processing my parents' divorce. I further went to therapy because I had an eating disorder as a teenager and a young adult. I went to therapy again as an adult, couples therapy, singles therapy, this, that, and the other. Make me believe that a weekend is going to be enough. What is it? Because most people do EMDR for years and years, but you just do it for a brief period of time. So what led you to the understanding that this could be done rapidly? And how do you convince your clients to actually believe that it's possible?
Really good question. And, I get a lot of clients as well that are kind of blown away by the possibilities because they've been going to therapy for many years, just like I have myself. And I love all therapy because I think that everything has its place. But I started to work with executive clients, entrepreneurs, leaders in business, film, and athletics. And I recognized that even 3 months is not enough time, is too much time for these individuals to really commit. And so I had to figure out a way how to go deeper, quicker. And the brain is able to, actually handle quite a bit of processing time. And like I said earlier, the brain wants to heal this stuff. So, I'll make a check ahead of time to make sure that I feel that the client's able to go that deep. But once we clear that first, assessment, we're going to hop in there and do this deep work and go really, really fast. So it really became, I developed this out of necessity for my clients because I really wanted to help these leaders to be able to make the changes lightning speeds, really, so that they can then have a bigger impact with their followers, their teams, their families. And really, when we're, the main issue that client's coming in for, let's say it's I'm not lovable. When this is eliminated from that person's, belief structure, their neurological sequence, that individual will leave with the biggest burden removed off their back. And, that it's kind of hard to believe in a way, I'll be honest, but by taking that leap of faith and just trying it, they'll find out very, very quickly within, hour or two that this is exactly the right decision that they've made. I'll give you an example as well, if that's okay. So one client that came in to see me for, well, she's an entrepreneur. She came in to see me for an addiction, and identifying that addiction and what was really underlying the addiction, which is always pain. It's always a distressing feeling that the individual is trying to escape from. And when we identified what that really was about, it was about, I'm not lovable. I'm not enough to be worthy of love. And immediately that weekend, 3 days, she left. The addiction was gone. She now was in charge of her team because she was afraid of actually leading, because she felt like an imposter. And if people knew what I was really doing behind closed doors, they wouldn't trust me. They wouldn't look up to me, which is it's really a theme I hear a lot. But when she went through this process, very, very, very quickly, she stepped into the confidence that she didn't even know that she had. And I think she got some that she, didn't have before. So it was just, and this was, I call her Brenda, which is not a real name, but what Brenda's experience is not the exception to the rule. It's my standard. That's what happens every weekend.
Oh, absolutely amazing. I am fascinated by this. And Robert, you have inspired me to go watch some YouTube videos of EMDR. If people are interested in learning more about you, the counseling that you do, and perhaps going deep and coming to a retreat with you, where can they find out more information?
They can hop onto my website at grigorcounseling.com. That's 2 L's because I'm in Canada. And you can learn all about EMDR and how I work, which is quite different, as you have alluded to. And you can watch videos that I've been in and featured in magazines, and all the media that I've been in is there on my website as well, so you can get a better idea of what I do. And feel free to reach out and just send me a message.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much, Robert Grigor, for being on the Lindsey Elmore Show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey there, listeners. I was recently a part of a very unique event called PodMAX. PodMAX is an amazing opportunity to connect podcast guests with major podcasts and help you as a guest to share your story with the podcast community. This is a unique invitation-only event that allows you to get interviewed on top-rated podcasts. It also provides you with a networking opportunity with high-performance guests and thought leaders who are authors, coaches, consultants, investors, speakers, executives, and more. PodMAX also provides an industry expert keynote that will share insights on not only podcasting, but branding, marketing, investing, and more that will allow you to either get the chutzpah to start your podcast, or take your podcast to the next level, or simply be a better podcast guest. The cool thing about PodMAX is that a multimedia agency is behind it. On-Air Brands provides social media promotions before and after the event to help you share your brand new shows around with your network. Apply to be a guest or apply to be a host right now by visiting http://podmax.co. I'll be at the next PodMAX event. Are you going to join me? Lauren Heath is a social worker turned entrepreneur with a passion for animals and helping others. She is the CEO and owner of Presidential Pet Care, which she founded all the way back in 2013. Lauren's experience working on several hotlines and being a social worker in Fairfax County has shaped how she approaches her business. And in addition, she has a key perspective as an Army brat that also informs how she runs her company. Lauren understands the importance and the power of human and animal bonds. It fuels her passion for her business. She's also enthusiastic about women's empowerment and specifically helps female entrepreneurs to reach their professional goals. She is an energetic CEO who has shared her experiences about professionalism and social media in the pet care industry through webinars, workshops, and presentations. And now it is my distinct honor to have Lauren on the Lindsey Elmore Show.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I want to just know your story. So you're a social worker who volunteered at a domestic violence shelter and then became a pet sitter. Like, tell me how this happened.
It's a weird path, right? So I studied psychology in school, and when I graduated, my first job was working at a domestic violence shelter in the area. So I worked the overnight shift there. And that was kind of what sparked things for me. You're probably wondering why. So in abusive relationships, a lot of times, if there's a pet involved, if there's a pet in the home, a lot of times people don't end up leaving that relationship because they don't want to leave their pets behind. So there's actually really staggering numbers that show that people don't leave because they don't want to leave their pets behind. There is an established link between cruelty to animals and violence against humans. So it kind of blew me away. So the shelter that I worked at, which now was 10 years ago, at that time, it was the only shelter in Virginia, and it was the only one in Virginia and only one of 9 in the entire country that also had a shelter for pets. So that way, if women or their families, were needing to leave, they could bring their pets with them, because that's a huge barrier. And it still is a barrier. A lot of places now offer that same thing. So that just kind of floored me. I couldn't believe that pets are so important to people that they are literally willing to risk their safety, their wellness, literally their lives for their pets. So, the human animal bond is so strong. So I kind of hopped around the social work field for a while, did a couple different things, all while doing some pet sitting, dog walking on the side. And I had kind of saved up enough money and eventually just kind of took the leap and started my own business. And so now I'm no longer in the social work field, but I do, I love helping people in a different way now. So it's just, I love every day of what I do, and I can't imagine doing anything differently.
So how is your approach different than the average pet sitter, dog walker? How do you leverage what I can already read the empathy that you have for people? And so how do you leverage that empathy and that compassion to create a better pet sitting experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what makes us different, and you kind of alluded to it earlier, is we have a very strong stance on being fear-free, force-free, stress-free. So there are certain tools that we do not use with our clients, which the pets are our clients, of course. So we don't use shock collars, we don't use prong collars or choke chains. So there's these tools that are considered aversive, and the intention is maybe the intention isn't to inflict pain, but basically it's to make the animal uncomfortable so that it will stop doing whatever you don't want it to do, and it'll do what you want. So we take the opposite approach, which we believe in rewarding pets for doing things that we want them to do. Just like, I'm sure parents do with children. I'm more likely as a human to be motivated if you give me chocolate. I like chocolate. I'm going to respond well to chocolate. If you yell at me and tell me all the things I'm doing wrong, it's going to make it harder for me to want to do that again. I'm going to feel nervous. I'm going to be scared. So you take that kind of same approach with pets, and, we really believe in positive reinforcement. So that, I've taken my belief, from a social worker, where I believe that people have the right to live healthy, happy, enriching lives, violence-free lives. And we've now applied that, in the pet industry as well. So being fear-free, certification is kind of starting to kind of become more well-known, and other folks are trying to kind of take that same approach as well, which is great. But I'm glad to be, kind of on the ground level of that approach.
Have you ever, in your experience, seen a pet that you thought was being abused and that maybe kind of tied this whole thing together where you go, I'm worried about this pet, and now I'm worried about potentially the woman that's in the home or the children being mistreated? You know, have you been able to recognize any of those signs and help facilitate, like, hey, girl, you don't have to live this life anymore?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have not had a situation where, we've kind of been in that space with anyone. I mean, our services are not cheap. We are a professional service. And so, we tend to have a certain type of client that, they see their pets as family and, all these kinds of things. So I haven't had that experience, but, I would feel comfortable if that were ever to happen to, know how to approach that based on the training that I've had. So but that is a really great question.
Well, I just, you have such a unique skill set that you're bringing to this. And so I just wondered if you had ever seen anything like that. But I am so relieved to hear that you have not. And that makes me happy.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a really great question. And actually, it's really interesting. And this is a little maybe off topic, but domestic violence is now becoming, something that's being discussed even more during quarantine because, calls are rising in some cases. And then in some cases they're not. And either way, it's not a good thing that people either are, calling hotlines because they're stuck at home with their abusers, or they're not even able to call. So anyway, it's just a really interesting and powerful thing.
So you've been an entrepreneur for a long time, which kudos to you. That's not easy to do. You started this company 7 years ago. And so how have you seen your company grow and change? And are there trends in pet care that have evolved over time? Like, what changes have you acknowledged and been through during your time as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Well, I know for me personally, at least, just to look at my growth and evolution, it's funny because if we would have been talking 7 years ago and you would have asked me what I did, I would have said, oh, I'm a dog walker, a pet sitter. I wouldn't say, oh, I'm a business owner or an entrepreneur. I saw myself in a very, I had kind of tunnel vision on what it is that I was doing. And so it took honestly a couple of years before I really started to look at what I was doing as a business. Even though I had employees, it just took kind of a different shift. And finally I, started, reaching out to, I got a mentor and started tapping into like the Small Business Development Center and things like that. So I kind of shifted there. And now, of course, I have, I guess a more clear path and goals. But as far as the industry, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people who have pets have heard of like Rover and Wag, which are these apps that exist now. So there's a lot of different, apps where you can download it on your phone. Like you could download it right now on your phone if you have a dog or a cat, and you could ask for a dog walker or pet sitter, and you could have someone come like later on today. It's just kind of this instant gratification. It's like the Uber of dog walking is what people call it. So, that it's had a really big impact on our industry. Especially a lot of the larger companies, like a lot of my colleagues I have a colleague who has like 180 employees. She has a massive pet care business. And I know that a lot of these folks have been really, really impacted because people don't want to wait. They want that instant gratification. The downside is that, you don't know who's coming to take care of your pet. And then from the caregiver's perspective, you don't know what you're walking into. So one way in which we, as me as in my company and also my colleagues, we're kind of, standing together and really trying to emphasize the importance of education and training, because you don't want just anyone coming into your home, number one, but you don't want anyone, taking care of your pet. You would interview a babysitter, so why would you not want to interview a pet sitter? And, do your due diligence and research. So it's not something that, I see as a hobby. This is my career, and there are a lot of other folks who, are on that same wavelength. So I think just the biggest struggle in the industry right now pre-pandemic struggle was just kind of trying to differentiate ourselves and stand out from like the hobbyists, so to speak.
Yeah. So one of the things that you mentioned the pandemic, and I was checking out your Instagram yesterday, and I noticed that you have taken a different approach. You're doing virtual events, you're doing things. And so I'm sure, your business is contingent on being around people. At least it was. And so what have you done to be creative in this moment where you go, I don't know what the future holds for us, and you have employees that are dependent on you to sustain their livelihoods. And so how have you handled that as a businesswoman?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's been a struggle and a journey, but also a blessing because so the first thing that we did is we immediately ceased how we were doing our services, and we put in very strict no contact procedures so that we were able to continue some services. Then after a few weeks, we did cease all non-essential services, and the only services that we were providing that weren't to essential workers is a new service that we created called field trips. So we basically would take dogs on hikes to different isolated areas and give them extended exercise, because pandemic or not, like, dogs still need to be walked, they need exercise. I had a client who's a teacher, and she called me, and she's home now, doing like webinar classes and all these things online. And her dog is a shepherd. And so he's got a lot of energy, and he's a rescue. And she called me and she was like, Lauren, like, I need this dog out of the house for a couple hours a day. Like, is there any way that you can take him and just play fetch with him? Like, that's all I need you guys to do is just play fetch with him for like 2 hours so that he can get worn out. It's like, no problem. Like, we've got you. And she started crying on the phone with me. She was so relieved because it's, yes, people are home, they can walk their own dogs, but, as a business owner, you're busy, like, you're doing a million different things. So it felt good to still be able to provide that type of service in that way. But the biggest pivot that we have done is we launched an online store. So we now sell products, which is brand new to me. I've learned a lot over the past month or so. And it's something I've been wanting to do for 5 years. And I just kept, it's like, oh, I'll do that later, but it'll come eventually. So it just took a pandemic for it to happen, apparently.
Nice. And what did you learn in that process of launching out the store and just saying, like, dang, I've put this off for so long? And so what have you learned in that process?
Oh, I have learned so much. Number one, I think the most important thing that I've learned is that the biggest barrier is oftentimes myself. So understanding that I could have done this a long time ago. I'm not mad at myself that I didn't, but, I do remind myself of that daily, like, look, this was hard, but like, you did it. So, I'm sure there's other things that I have that same mindset on that I need to evaluate. But also, I learned that there's just so many moving parts, and I have recently expanded my leadership team and brought someone else on board into it because I have an amazing team. I have a wonderful team, and I rely on them a lot for, providing the actual services. But when it comes to the back end administrative side of things, I've gotten so used to doing it on my own. And so I've really tried to kind of let down that wall and really allow, my team to really come in and help not just run things, but help grow things. So I'm really, really grateful. And just in the past week, bringing someone on board literally earlier this week, there's already been such growth and change. So that's been honestly probably the most exciting thing about the pandemic is just the mindset change and everything.
Yeah. So when you're running your own company, you inevitably make a lot of mistakes. What mistakes have you made along the way that have gotten you to this point? I mean, it sounds like you have a little bit of struggle to like relinquish control a little bit.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, tell us about where you failed forward.
Oh yeah. I love failing. It is the best learning experience. And all the mistakes that I've made have still been cheaper than I would if I would have gotten an MBA. So I'm perfectly happy with all the mistakes that I've made. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think kind of what you said has been my biggest, maybe not mistake, but the biggest error in my ways have just been really thinking that I have to do everything and just learning that I really don't. And I have this amazing team that, I have somehow just, been so lucky to bring on board. They've got my back. And so I think just, at first, not really being willing to be vulnerable, really, for a long time, about what I'm struggling with, what I need help with. I think for a long time, how I viewed myself is very different than how I encourage other people to view themselves, right? Because of course we're always hardest on ourselves. But it was hard for me to be vulnerable and, admit like, hey, I really need help with these things. So I think that, and then I would say probably the other biggest mistake, so to speak, would have been not to invest in a mentor sooner. I got a business coach and I think we started working together probably 4 years ago, actually, I think. And she's in my industry as well. And it's been a game changer. Having someone who supports you, calls you out on your ways. She's also an overachiever, high achiever. We have a lot of similarities. And so, having someone who really knows you, and will, hold your hand, but also, push you closer to the edge and make you jump off has been, I would say the biggest, best thing that I wish I would have done sooner.
I agree. I worked with a business coach. I had worked with communications coaches, with speaking coaches, with lots of different kinds of coaches, but never like a true, this is how you propel your business forward. And so what were some of the best lessons that you learned from your business coach?
Great question. I think honestly, communication for sure. She's a wonderful communicator and I have grown a lot in that area, I think. So just, I think establishing like what communication should look like. But also I think on the most important thing, actually, now that I'm saying this out loud, is building, she's really helped me strengthen and refine like my company's culture, which is something that I feel like I wouldn't have known to call it that in the very beginning. But I think it's something that I had from the beginning, even when it was just myself, because I think, again, bringing my social work back into it, I've always been an extremely empathetic person and communicate with people in a very, specific way. And I think people, our clients pick up on that. And so then when I started bringing, team members on board and they see how I communicate with clients, they want to emulate that. And, that just kind of became a part of our process. So I think, establishing, my coach helped me kind of establish some, boundaries and ground rules and, practices. And I'll go back to boundaries again, especially with myself. So that's been extremely helpful. But, company culture is something that I didn't really know much about. I know what it felt like. I think people know what it feels like to be in a place that has a strong company culture, but I wasn't sure how do you actually make that happen?
Yeah. So what are the values of your company that you really want to permeate through the entire culture?
Yeah. We are passionate, positive, and inclusive. So that is one of our biggest things. We're all passionate people, and that's not something you can teach someone. You either are or you're on. You are or you aren't. And that's the number one thing I look for when I'm interviewing someone.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care what you know about pets, but I can teach you anything you need to know about pets. I need to know what kind of person you are, and you have to be passionate about, learning people. You have to be passionate about people. You wouldn't believe how many people come into an interview and say, I'm like, oh, why do you want this job? Well, I really love animals and I don't really want to work with people. Like, well, this isn't the right job for you then.
With us.
Right. Like, it's the humans that hire us. So that's one of our values. But team first is actually our first value. And I would say it's probably the most important one, because at the end of the day, I will always choose a team member over a client, because our team is the core and the foundation of what we do. And we can't serve our clients to the best of abilities if we don't have the best people on our team. So I've actually let a client go before who was she was going to be such a great client. Her pets were amazing. I love them. They all had Star Wars themed names, which I thought was so cool. She was going to be, bringing in a lot of business, but she treated my team members really badly. And so eventually I just kind of had to, end that relationship. And, you can't, how you treat people is so important. And so going back to culture, that is something that I would never sacrifice and change. I think I've always done that well from the beginning. So being able to try to, infuse that into our brand and how we do things has been instrumental.
So you've got a lot of advanced certifications, and you've done some key training programs, and you're members of organizations. Why do you think it is so important to not be a hobbyist in your industry?
I think if you want to be taken seriously, and also if you want to protect yourself, you have to take it seriously, because this isn't just going and, hooking on a leash and going for a walk. There's a million different things that can go wrong. What's going to happen when an off-leash dog comes and runs at you, and you're walking, a pit bull, and your pit bull client, is the sweetest dog in the whole world and wouldn't hurt a fly, and this aggressive chihuahua comes at you, and, what are you going to do in that situation? Your client's going to be seen, as at fault because of what breed it is. So how do you handle that? What happens when you walk into, a client's house and they're having a seizure, which is something that has happened before? You have to have training and to know how to respond in these situations. You need to know what the resources are in your community. And, and I think also just out of respect for the animals, just like you would want, again, like your babysitter to know how to take care of children, and you would want them to know, first aid and CPR. You want the quality of the person that's caring for your child, whether it's human, two-legged or four-legged, you want them to be qualified so that they can respond in an emergency, and that they're just in the best of hands. So.
Well, it's been so great to talk to you today. You can find Lauren and her pet care services at prezpets.shop and on Instagram at prezpets. And so, Lauren, I am so grateful that you said yes to coming on the Lindsey Elmore Show.
Thank you so much for having me, Lindsey. I appreciate it.
The Lindsey Elmore Show is written and produced by me, Lindsey Elmore. Show segments are produced by Sue Procco and Kelsey Lorman. Production design, sound design, and editing is by Jive Media. If you have a question about this or any other episode of the podcast, send us an email to hello@lindseyelmoreshow.com. And hey, since you're still here, take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And while you're at it, go over and follow us on Instagram @Lindsey Elmore Show. This helps us bring the pod to more people.